things and how she's like
And
forming
she's
her
just
own.
3.
She's just 3. That's the most beautiful part about all this. And
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Parenthood, the podcast where we dive deep into the real, unfiltered stories of parents navigating family life and everything else life brings at us. I'm your host, Neha Garg, and this week I'm joined by someone whose story I find deeply grounding and inspiring, Sharadha Ramakrishnan. Shar was an engineering leader until recently, and now she's a full time mom. She and her partner Ashwin have been together for 11 years, and they've built a relationship on equity, not just in words, but in the way they share opportunities, challenges, and parenting responsibilities. Their children, Ved, who's 5, and Ela, who's 3, have already shaped their lives in ways they couldn't have imagined. Parenting began for them right before COVID hit, and that in itself brought a whole new set of adjustments. And then, with their elder child being diagnosed as autistic, the journey took an even more unexpected and transformative path. What I love about Shar's perspective is that while she acknowledges the initial isolation, she also talks about how they've found their identity as parents in this process. Today, we are going to hear about what that journey has been like, the shifts, the joys, the hard days, and the moments that remind you why it's all worth it. Shar, thank you for being here and thank you for saying yes to this.
thank you so much, Neha. It was such a lovely intro.
Thank you. And let's start with a little bit about you. If you had to describe yourself in just 3 words or phrases that capture the essence of who you are as a person, what would they be and why?
Interesting. Empathetic. I
Uh-huh.
think that is one thing that even more so than my observation of myself, I've heard a lot of other people describe me as empathetic, and I do think it's a strength of mine. Passionate. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think I approach anything that I do with a lot of passion, which I also think can sometimes be a weakness, but mostly is a strength.
Yeah.
And I think lastly, I would say loving.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a lot of love to give, and I think that follows through with the empathy. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I guess loving all kind, either ways. I strive to be more loving and more kind every day.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. And could you introduce us to your family, Ved, Neela, and Ashwin? Maybe tell us something about each of them that makes you smile instantly.
Yeah, of course. So Ashwin and I were friends before we got married. I've known him for the longest time. We met in college. We didn't date in college, but then after we graduated, we decided it only makes sense to get married. So
Oh.
we've been on this journey for a while, and I think that's kind of what made up the foundation of our
Yeah.
marriage. We knew that whatever comes our way, there is friendship that we can fall back on. And once that's there as a foundation, I think you can get through a lot of things as a team. I think the thing that makes me smile about him is he always says, we're a team, we approach life as a team. And that's where I think my idea about like being the partnership in marriage is about equity, right? At the end of the day, it's like not equality, I think is doesn't fully capture what it is
Yeah.
to be in a marriage. And I think equity is where we can spend some more time there when we get to it.
Yeah.
Uh, and then Wade came along in 2019 and completely changed our world. Like we went in as a 5-month-old, we went into COVID, and we had to figure out how to, balance parenting with shelter in place. Like we were at the time, we were in California, and it was like very, very strict in terms of like not expanding our social bubble. And so we had to figure out how to parent him, as well as maintain 2 full-time jobs, which was very challenging. And honestly, without supportive workplaces, and I think you were mentioning when we were talking earlier about how workplaces can be supportive to parents, and that's kind of where I learned how, there is a whole parent behind the person that comes to work, right? And so
Yeah.
we learned a lot about each other at work as well during that time. And then Ila came along in 2021, and she again turned our lives upside down, and she's like the brightest spot of sunshine in our lives. Um,
Oh.
I'm more than happy to talk about both of them in detail as we go. But I think the thing that I love about both of them, you mentioned Ved is autistic, and Illa is neurotypical, but the journey we're on is very unique.
Mhm.
It's not just that we are parents of an autistic child or just parents of neurotypical child. We're parents of both of them,
Yeah.
and helping each of them navigate the world while developing empathy for each other has been very, very unique and very rewarding.
Yeah.
As a slight example, when I make a snack at home and I tell Illa, oh, mommy made this thing, this chocolate bar, and you can have it later on. The first thing she asks me is it gluten-free, mama? So Anna can also have it because
Ayyo.
it's gluten-free. Yeah. So I think like seeing that developed between the both of them, I think is very special.
Yeah, and you've been with Ashwin for 11 years now, and I know equity, you talk about that. It's a huge pillar of your relationship. You said you've been friends before you became partners in
Yeah.
marriage. So how has your partnership evolved over the years, especially since becoming parents?
Yeah, I mean it's not a easy ride, right? I think there's a lot of ups and downs. Even if you have a rock solid foundation, that foundation can have like develop a lot of cracks as you grow up as an individual, as you evolve as an individual, so does your relationship. And all of these things like curveballs that are coming your way. I mean, becoming a parent and having a child is already a huge curveball in a relationship. Like you have to rediscover yourselves. I mean, just imagine you have a kid, right? The 2 weeks after the child is born, the sleeplessness, the sleep deprivation just is
Kicks
killing
in.
you, right? It's
Yes.
insane. And then you have this journey of breastfeeding, and then you have all of these things that you have this new individual to take care of, and you can't really figure out what is your role here. Like how do you figure this out, And so you're navigating all of that with the small human being that's like constantly asking for things, and you're in a mode of continuously giving, right? And so between yourselves you have to figure out, in that mode of giving, when are you refilling your cup, and who is filling whose cup? You don't really know, right? So that's a big curveball. And then you have this autism diagnosis as another big curveball that comes your way. And in the midst of all that, you have a second child. And before we had Ella, before we knew about the AIDS
Uh-huh.
diagnosis. I think it was when I look back on it, I think it was serendipitous for us that it happened that way, because I think we would have reconsidered having another child had we known about his diagnosis, because we would have wanted to give him all of the
Yeah.
importance and the care and this thing. And we did probably wouldn't have believed in ourselves of being able to expand our hearts and love and time to accommodate both of them. But now I feel like it was the best decision ever. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think the hardest part of our relationship was the last couple of years. The last year, I think we spent a lot of time, him and I, in terms of like putting time into ourselves and our relationship to get back to a place of trust and safety.
Yeah.
But I would be lying if I said that these things did not test that trust and safety, right? That was on very, I would say we were walking on eggshells for a little bit, like not really knowing whether this is going to work out or not, because it was really, really trying.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I feel like we've gone through this arc of where the first 5 years of our marriage, we did everything. We traveled, we partied, we, built our friendships, we built our careers. Like we were super secure in our careers before we had Ved. And that was one of our goals. Like we want to be financially independent. We want to be secure in our career before we have children. And then you can do all of that, and then it can all go out the window when you have these challenges that are presented to you, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to dive in deeper about the challenges we had specifically and how we went about like addressing them. But I feel like I just both of us in the last year have found a therapist that we talk to, and we found that therapy is actually a big tool in our belt to figure out how to navigate this, because at the end of the day we rely too much on each other to
Yeah.
support. And when you don't have that bandwidth, and the other person doesn't have that bandwidth to absorb what you have to say, you're like, okay, where else do I go now?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
friends can go only so far.
Yeah.
So I think therapy has been really helpful for us. And I think this last 6 to 8 months has definitely been on the up again, where we're finding our way towards that trust and safety.
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. And
Yeah.
I like how you acknowledge the fact that, it's not been an easy ride, because it's so easy to gloss over the details and say that, oh my God, my life is perfect, or
Yeah.
at least to show that side. And it speaks to your honesty and vulnerability, I think, in that sense, that you are willing to, acknowledge it and say it as it is.
100%. I feel like there's a lot of stuff we see online today, especially after COVID. A lot of stuff has become online. Consumption of information has become Instagram and social media. And that's what you see. You see other people's relationships, other people's lives online, and it looks picture perfect. And you compare yourself to that. And I feel like it's pointless because
Yeah.
behind every one of those picture perfect lives, there are challenges, and you can't be without challenges. And I think the best way to build communities and best way to like inspire other people or have impact on other people is to share the hard parts. Like
Yeah.
I go back to even when before I had Ved, I took a bunch of like these classes, right? It was my first kid. So I was so excited about going to this breastfeeding class and birthing class, and everything was so rosy. They were like, breastfeeding is the most natural thing in the world. You know, no, nobody talked about C-sections. Everyone was like, oh, the baby will just pop out of you, whatever. It's the most natural thing ever. And then you get to it, and it's like, what? Why did anybody tell me how hard this is? So I think nobody talks about the bad stuff.
Yeah.
I think more of us need to talk about it, and we need to put it out there so people know that they're not alone.
Yeah, yeah. And I am glad you touched upon the, whole birthing experience and all of that. So let's talk about becoming a parent. What do you remember most vividly about those early days, right before and right maybe after COVID?
After I had Ved,
Yes.
yeah. So again, that the first few months, so Ved was a C-section baby, and I was in labor for 45 hours.
What?
Yeah. And he was a very big baby. He was 9 pounds, so almost 4.5 kg. So
Yeah.
very big baby. And even that birthing, I remember so vividly how my mom and my husband were there with me in the delivery room. And we had all the stuff, like the machines were all plugged to me, whatever. I had my epidural going, and it was like hour 45. I was like, I don't know when this is going to end. I'm just going to like relax. Like, let's see when this happens. And my mom and I were just talking about, she was like, had my camera in her hand. She was like, I'm going to document this thing. And we were just like so relaxed and chatty. And suddenly the emergency button gets pushed, and this whole bunch of nurses and doctors and everybody rush in. Apparently, like the baby's heart rate had started to drop, and none of us knew. And I'm just thought the reason I cite this particular incident is I was so naive
Hmm.
about how serious this all is, right?
Yeah.
Because you see movies, and you see your shows, and you see all of these like women's, they go into labor, they come out with a happy baby. Nobody
Yeah.
really like talks about the nuances of it. So I think from then on, it's all been like one after the other, disproving the rosy picture we had. And so the most vivid thing I remember is I had never seen a breast pump before. And
Hmm.
the day after I delivered, after I delivered Ved, he latched on and everything, and but because of my C-section meds and things like that, I wasn't producing enough milk, and he was a big baby, so he needed a lot of milk. And they brought a breast pump out, and they were like, "You should start pumping." And I was like, "What? What is this thing?" And I remember, oh my God, Neha, I just remember day in and day out washing bottles, washing parts. I mean, my husband and I, right? Like we did this day in and day out, washing parts, washing bottles. pumping. I would breastfeed him, I would pump. I would breastfeed him, I would pump. Then he would wash the thing. I would breastfeed, I would pump. And it was just never ending. I was like, when am I going to get out of this house for a walk? And I think it lasted for about 2 weeks. And then we went to get his weight checked, and they were like, you don't need to stress yourself out so much. He's gaining weight fine, and
Yeah.
but in those 2 weeks, it's like, what am I doing? Like, am I being a bad mom? I don't even know how to do these things. So I think that's the thing that I remember most vividly.
And what about Ila? What about her?
So it was the exact contrast, right? Because I went in for Ved with sky high expectations and this really rosy picture. And with Ila, I had a VBAC. I had a vaginal birth. And basically, I told the doctor, look, I want to avoid another major surgery. So if you let me do a trial of labor, let's see where it takes me. If we're in any danger, like immediately do the C-section. And I went in with such low expectations. I was like, I don't have any expectations. I'm going to let it take its course. And I think my maturity as a mom by then really showed through. But I went in without any expectations, still a 30-hour labor.
Oh
But
my God.
but in one push, she was out. It was calm. She breastfed immediately. Like the lactation consultant came in. She's like, okay, you've got this. There's no need for me to be here. And she left. I don't remember pumping as much. I don't remember all of that stuff. And it's just the contrast of being a first time mom versus a second time mom. And I remember she was such a good baby. She used to sleep a lot. And then I remember little Ved, he was so taken by his sister. He was like so in love with her. And so it was all for me, more than the new baby, it was all about watching him
Yeah.
adapt to his sister. And like that dynamic was really sweet. Yes, that's what I remember the
Yeah.
most.
How old was he? Two? Two when she was?
Yes, two, exactly
Oh.
two. Yeah.
And you mentioned, Wade's autism diagnosis as a turning point in your parenting journey. What
Yeah.
were those? And I'm sure Ela was also very young at that point of time. So, what were those early weeks and months like for you after finding out, and how did you process it as a family?
Yeah, so again, that's been another major learning curve, right? So I feel like with each of these life experiences, we've we've grown from it. We've evolved, we've grown, we've become better human beings. But when we were in it, it did not feel like an evolution journey at all. Felt like we were being dragged through the mud, right? Because you take this child that you think like is he is still perfect in every single way. But at the time, you're like, there can be nothing wrong with him. There's, he's doing fine. All of the well child appointments, when they ask us to say, does he have 50 words? Yes,
Yeah.
he has 50 words. Is he walking? Yes, he's walking. Is he doing this? Yes, he's doing it. But then the thing with detecting whether a child is autistic or not is very nuanced.
Hmm.
Think about, and that's something that I learned much later. So we went for these evaluations, and the evaluator would spend 45 minutes with him and have these like random tests, like of oh, if I show him a remote control car and then the car is moving, is he looking back at the remote control and expecting me to move the remote control so that the car moves again? And I was like, obviously he doesn't know. He doesn't have a remote control car at home. Like, why is he
Yeah.
going to do
Yeah.
that? And so there are all these little nuances around picking up whether a child is autistic or not that we never understood. So, and nobody really explained it to us because it's a very hard thing to explain in the first place. So, and at the time, he didn't have too many symptoms. He still is verbal. He was verbal back then as well. And at 2.5, it's very difficult to pick it up. At 3 is when we got his diagnosis after he went to school. And
Right.
so it was very, very, that acceptance is a hard thing to come by. Not the acceptance that, oh, something's wrong with your child or whatever, but he's different. There is
Yeah.
a, he is going to have a different childhood than you expected he would have. And
Yeah.
you would have a different parenting journey than you expected to have. And what makes it even more isolating in an already isolating experience is you don't know anybody who went through this. Nobody
Right.
is, before then we hadn't really talked to anybody that had brought up an autistic child. We didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
And so, and you meet with all these providers, medical providers, And all they say is, oh, yes, your child has an autism diagnosis. Early intervention is the best thing. Go talk to therapists. And from then on, it's up to you to figure it out. And again, I'm
Wow.
talking about the medical system that I experienced in the US. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other or anything, but at the end of the day, I found that parents are pretty much by themselves when it comes to figuring out what next steps are. It's a
Right.
very, very isolating journey, which is why I talk more about it now, and I try to like help people understand that there are communities, there are people who are willing to talk about it. And so that was another like crack in everything that we had built, right? This identity we had built as a family, the work, our, work selves, like how much time we had to take this child to like different evaluations, different therapies. How do we figure that out between ourselves? Because both of us had very demanding jobs. Who takes Ved to which therapy? Who takes Ila to which appointment? We had to figure all of that out, and this is all the more demand on our time, like
Right.
taking him to speech, taking him to occupational therapy, taking him to behavioral therapy. And so at one point you start questioning why do we have to go through this, And the answer for that came later to me. Like I understood after we went through that journey, I understood that it's not about why do we have to go through this and all of that. At the end of the day, if you choose to have a child, you should be prepared to have an autistic child. You should be prepared to have a disabled child. You should be prepared to have any sort of child. At the end of the day, it's your child. And
Yeah.
you do whatever it takes to help them lead a happy, independent life. But that took a long time to get to that point, right? Because again, all of these things are breaking around you, like your norms are breaking, your images and everything is breaking around you, and takes a while to get to the other side. So that was a very, 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 very tough journey. And like to give you a small example, there was a period where they had severe sound sensitivities.
Mm.
Ila was in a stage at 5, 6 months where she would start vocalizing, when they're in their five,
Oh,
6 months
yeah.
teaching, and he would lose his shit. He would just cry and cry and cry. And so there was a period of 6, 7 weeks where we had to parent them in different rooms.
Wow.
Like one parent with one kid, the other parent with the other kid. And oh God, at that point, Ashwin and I were like, what have we gotten ourselves into? It was extremely challenging, but touch wood, we're past all that.
You know what? What I am really, really taken by is you saying that it has taken you a long time to come to this conclusion or realization that, it's your child. But I think it's happened, it's happened quite early for you. Ved is just 5 years old. I have seen parents and I have talked to parents who take years and years and years and decades to come to this realization. And I don't know if they ever come to this realization or not. So it's less than half a decade of you getting to this realization. So it's quite impressive in that sense.
Thank you for saying. Thank you for saying. I still beat myself up about like the year or two that I lost in just trying to like intellectualize this or like think about why, find the cause, find the this. And I'm like, no, at the end of the day, like, and it took me a while to also educate myself about the autistic brain and that it's a different neurotype, that you can't ask why my brain is a certain way. Same way you
Yeah.
can't ask why his brain is a certain way. He just is who he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And so all that education and the acceptance and everything has taken a while, but I still beat myself up about that. I was like, maybe if I hadn't spent so much time just wasting time those 2 years, maybe I could have given more to my child, maybe I could have focused more on him and not made it about me, because that this is kind of what I've realized. It's not about me at all.
Yeah.
It's about giving him a happy childhood and enjoying him. And maybe if I hadn't spent so much time on myself, those couple of years where I could have enjoyed him more, I could have enjoyed Ella more, So that's
But
kind
this is the thing about could have, would have, should have,
of
that you can go beating yourself up about that. But the thing is that sadly or happily, that you can't really go and change the past. So what has happened. And I'm just so glad that you've kind of are at a point in your journey where you can just look back and say that, okay, this is what is this is what it is, and we have to make the most of what it is. And I'm
Absolutely.
also very interested to know, what brought upon the diagnosis. You've spoken about it, you've touched upon it, a little briefly, saying that it was when he went to school that the diagnosis was, the diagnosis happened.
Yeah.
But what really led it on?
Yeah, so I think mainly speech
Mm.
was the indicator that there could be some challenges that he has, because the questionnaire itself asks things like, when you go for a well child appointment in the US, there's a questionnaire that's given where it says, does the child have 50 words? Does the child have 100 words based on their age?
Yeah.
And it's very easy to check that off, because my child had words. He had academic words. He could label all colors. He could say the numbers. He could name people around him. What they're really looking for at that age is whether they have functional communication. Is
Right.
the child saying things like, when Ella was born is when I understood, right? Is it social communication do they have? Like, for example, Mama, look, there's an airplane. Or
Hmm.
Mama, look at this flower. It's the same flower that was there in grandma's house. So things like that. That's what children are trying to establish joint attention with people that they love, people that
Right.
they care about. They're saying, oh, look at this thing that I'm finding joy from. I
Mhm.
want you also to look at it so that you can share in my joy, right? And that's a
Right.
very hard concept to explain to a new parent of what is
Right.
communication, what is social communication. So when he went to school, even though at home he was expressing all his needs and wants to us, and he was playing with us, and we used to play a lot of hide and seek and catch and this and that, so we didn't see any red flags at all. But when he went to school, he was unable to, in that environment, talk to his peers or
Right.
functionally communicate with, and joint attention for the most part. So that the teacher is reading a book, and the children are all looking at the book, and she's like, depending on that joint attention, which is the fundamental building block of social communication, for the children to understand what she's doing. But Wade didn't pick up on that cue at all. He was not
Hmm.
really looking, didn't even click for him that the story is being read out for him. And because
Right.
his peers are looking at the book, he is supposed to look at the book, because that's a cue he has to pick up on, right? So
Right.
these are the sorts of things that kind of led
Wow.
to the fact that, okay, this child may be having differences in how he learns, how he perceives his environment. And one-on-one, he does great. He's wonderful one-on-one. But when he's in a group setting, it's harder for him to notice that. Oh, so for example, when um the monkey see, monkey do, right? When children all line up, when
Hmm.
a couple of children line up, other children kind of go and fall in line.
Yeah.
They're all social cues that you pick up. You're like, oh, this person's doing that, let me go do that. Ved has no such thing.
Hmm.
Doesn't like, because someone else is doing it, I need to go do it. None of that, So I think these are all things that these are the things that we try to work on in therapy. Like, how do you pick up on, how can he generalize imitation skills? How can he generalize picking up social cues in larger settings, not just one-on-one settings, in larger settings as well. And he has like auditory, like the children on the spectrum have a lot of sensory difficulties,
Yeah.
right? Sensory integration difficulties. So tactile difficulties, like visual, auditory. And so for Wade, I think primarily it's auditory, where he's not able to isolate. So when you're talking to me and you have a lot of different noises around you, we're in a noisy restaurant, you're still able to pay attention to me.
Yeah.
Whereas for him, all of the audio channels are the same volume. So he's not able to pay attention to what someone is saying to him.
Yeah.
And so in a school environment, it's very hard. He even hears the buzz of the fluorescent lights,
Oh.
so it's very hard for him. So these are all things that we work on in therapy with goals to say, okay, this is what we want to get at the end of 6 months. He should be able to do XYZ. So yeah, that's kind of what led us down that path.
But this is so interesting, just because beyond beyond the diagnosis, knowing what brought upon the diagnosis is just so interesting, even as an intellectual exercise. Like, I am listening to it as an outsider of your family unit, and I find it so interesting because these are the kind of things that can be easily missed out.
Mhm. Yeah.
And to pick up on that, and to say that, this child has this problem and let me solve that for him or her is such an important part of this journey, because
Absolutely.
it is so easy to just look over these things and just say that, yeah, it's a matter of time, or it's a matter of, him picking up this later in life or something of that sort. And because it's, as you rightly mentioned in the beginning, it's so nuanced.
Yeah,
So if it's, I mean, I'm just amazed at the kind of details this diagnosis goes into to call a child what he or she should be called, and then they should be given that kind of therapy, that kind of treatment. They should be given that, at least that opportunity should exist, because if there is no diagnosis, how do you then go in for that kind of therapy?
exactly, exactly. I think the thing that you rightly hit upon is it is nuanced. It's very, very, very nuanced. And so a lot of children go undiagnosed as
Yeah.
well. Like for him, his biggest red flag was speech. But
Hmm.
let's say he had speech,
Yeah.
right? A lot of children do. A lot of girls, in fact, have speech, but they are
Wow.
autistic and it gets missed. Uh,
Mm.
because they're social, because and what people think is that they think of autistic kids as very stereotypical,
Yeah.
or flapping their hands, sitting in a corner, not being social. That's not how autism presents at all. My son is extremely affectionate. He hugs
Mm.
and kisses everybody he can find, right? But that's not what you typically think when you think of an
Yeah.
autism, right? There are some children that are very, very verbal, that articulate as anything, but they get missed because they have
Mm.
speech. They're like, oh, can't possibly be autistic. But there are I keep trying to like articulate this in my posts as well. You must have heard, there are levels for autism, right? They say mild, moderate, and severe, high functioning, low functioning, and all of that. And I feel it's such a disservice to these children to explain it that way, because like you rightly said, there are so many different traits. Like if you think of it as a pie, there are so many slices of the pie that have different traits, and each of these traits can be amped up or amped down in terms of like how much the child is finding a challenge
Yeah.
with it. It could be speech, it could be sensory, it could be social communication, it could be anything in this pie. And it's hard to say low or high functioning, because
Yes.
they can be low or high functioning in any one of these things, right? And
Yeah.
they each need individual attention to each one of these things too. And then it takes a lot of debugging by the parent and the therapist to find out exactly what is this child's trigger.
Yeah.
If this child is putting everything, which a lot of autistic children do, is put everything in their mouths because they're trying to
Yeah.
explore their surroundings by mouthing things. But it's because of a certain thing, it's because of a trigger, or it's because of a sensory need, or it's because of an attention need, or it's because of an access need, or something like that. They're doing it for a purpose, because behavior is also communication. And
Yeah.
so debugging that takes weeks,
Wow.
then addressing it to say, okay, this is why this behavior is happening, and this is what the child is trying to tell us, and here's how we can, help the child. It takes a really long time.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. This is a masterclass in itself, you know. I'm just glad we are having this conversation, not for the very, very selfishly for myself, because I'm getting to know so much about this at this conversation's expense, so to say. But also tell me something, Shar. You said that in you were kind of you're left to fend for yourself once the diagnosis is there, in terms of what is the next step, what is the therapy going to be like, and all of that. So how did you figure it out? What was your journey like?
Yeah, so another superpower in the autistic community is autistic parents of autistic children who have
Yeah.
walked this path before and who are willing to share, right? So I think my first thing to do, and I'm the kind of person, I do this with every single problem I'm presented in life. I go find a community, or I make my own community, because I'm like, as much as you can share, you will learn, and you'll give back to the community as well. So first thing I did, I went looking for other autistic children's parents, because the medical system is only equipped to do so much. They're already overworked. They're like, here's your diagnosis, go find your therapist. But then you have wait lists, you have like 6, 7 months that you have to wait for therapists. What do you do in that meantime? Like, you're like, okay, early intervention is important, but if you wait 8 months, 10 months to get a
Yeah.
therapist, like when does the child start? And so I will be forever grateful to the parents who have walked this path before me, and who took time out of their day to coach me, to help me understand how to navigate this, shared tips and where to look for what, who to talk to. And then finally somehow I stumbled upon this amazing woman who was doing this pro bono work of just talking to parents who had newly diagnosed children,
Wow.
guiding them on what the next steps are. And there was like a free masterclass that you could take. And that's kind of where my journey started, of like, okay, how do I even wrap my head around what this diagnosis is? And then from then on, it's all, everything that I have learned is via other parents who have walked this path before me. And like, honestly, it's been like the biggest asset to have that community. And in my own way, I started building a community as well of other moms who have reached out and said, hey, I've seen your posts, I've seen you be vocal about this, like, I just have a newly diagnosed son. Or they might be struggling with even getting a diagnosis or
Right.
getting to that acceptance, and kind of pushing them to that place where it's like, you need to do this for your child's sake, and begin that journey of acceptance. So that's kind of where I learned most of it. And then, of course, after that, it was like a snowball effect of reading papers, reading other articles, and educating myself.
Beautiful, beautiful. And tell me about yourself in terms of how has parenting, especially in your circumstances, changed who you are at the core? Has it changed you in that sense?
Yeah, I'm like not the same person I was 10 years back at all. Like, I'm deeply, deeply changed in, I think, a lot of good ways. I definitely do think, like, I called myself an empathetic person, but after having Ved, the amount of empathy like the empathy has just gone like it's skyrocketing now, right? Like, I can't even imagine being in a world where you don't understand how things work. Like, why is this thing so loud? Or why is this thing so bright? Or why is this person saying this? Or why is this person behaving as, how scary it must be to live in that world. And just helping him navigate that has humbled me, has given me new perspective, has given me empathy beyond reason. Like, it's just like every time someone does something, the first instinct for me is to say, okay, what must they be feeling for them to react this way? Or what must they be feeling for them to, instead of anger or instead of like any sort of reaction, my first instinct is to think, except my husband, okay, I sometimes get upset with him. He's like, why can't you show me the same empathy? But like, that's another story. But I think in those ways, like, and it's translated so positively into my work as well.
Mm.
As of last month I quit my job, but up until then I was an engineering coach, and I've been a coach for the last 3.5 years. But even then, before that, as an engineering leader, my leadership approach was very much coaching based. And so, as a coach, you need to be on the sidelines. You need to be extremely empathetic. You need to be listening. You need to be thinking about how you can provide servant leadership to people, how you can like help them realize their maximal potential. And for that, you need to truly understand where the other person is so that you can guide them to where they need to be. And I speak about this a lot as well. If I was not the parent that I am, and if I
Yeah.
did not have this parenting journey, I would not be the coach that I could be at work. And I would not be able to impact the lives of the people that I did impact at work, the engineers that I did coach. And so for that, I'm extremely, extremely grateful that,
How
it's,
remarkable.
yeah, positive experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell me about your co-parenting journey with Ashwin. How do you guys divide parenting responsibilities? Can you share some examples of, how this works between the two of you?
Yeah, so that's also evolving,
Yeah.
uh, right? And I think in the beginning, we had equality in our mind, and we had interpreted it in a very literal sense. If I wake up in the night, you wake up in the night. If I change a diaper, you change a diaper. If I feed, you feed. Like, straight down the middle, we split the responsibilities and we're like, you do this, I do this. But I don't think it works out that way. And we're seeing that especially after now I'm a stay-at-home mom, full-time
Yeah.
stay-at-home mom. It's even more evident that I have some strengths and he has some strengths, and we
Yeah.
both have to feed off of each other, right? And but it takes a lot of security and understanding and maturity to get to that stage, because my identity is very deeply tied with the person I am at work. My career is extremely important to me, and it's taken me a long time to get to this point where I'm like, no, the thing that I'm actually should be doing right now is focus on my family. And the reason I did this is because I'm homeschooling Ved, which
No.
which is why I took the break in the first place. And I was like, no, this is everything that I've done so far has prepared me for this moment.
Hmm.
It's for me in my head previously, it was like, no, it's preparing me for my next big thing in my career. But I truly do believe it's prepared me. All the things that I went through, even my in professional life, has prepared me for this moment, right?
Wow.
To for me to capitalize on the strengths that I have, to focus on my family and get my family to the next stage, which
Hmm.
means focusing on the children right now, focusing on my relationship, focusing on myself and my health and my well-being as well. And he has a lot of strengths. Like, he thinks about wealth creation, he thinks about the future of the family. He thinks, and it's very naturally comes to him, and he enjoys doing it as well. I couldn't care less about wealth creation. I don't have the aptitude for it as well. So I think, like, figuring out, understanding that equity in marriage is about access to opportunity and respecting each other's choices, having the choice, and then respecting when someone makes that choice, is what we truly want, right? And I think him respecting the fact that I've taken this decision to focus on the family, instead of reminding, he used to, like, there was once before where I had contemplated this, and he was like, I've brought fierce feminism into this relationship, and so he's now fiercely feminist. And so he reminded me, saying, "No, Shar, your career's your identity. Like, your mental health be affected in this and that." But then this time around, he actually listened to what I had to say and said, "No, I respect your choice."
Hmm.
And vice versa, right? And me being comfortable with him being the person who takes care of the finances and not feeling threatened by that, I
Right.
that's the place I really needed to be, and I'm finally there. So yeah, I think that's what makes us better parents as well, and that translates into how we think about how we parent these children.
Yeah.
um Ashwin's better, honestly, really good at entertaining the children. Like, he can go hours and hours and hours to play with them. I take care of the executive functioning, right? Like, I
Hmm.
take care of appointments and social calendars and birthday parties and whatever it is. And we recognize each other's strengths and weaknesses there as well. So I think that's kind of what it is at the end of the day. And we do find opportunities to spend time as a family and create those memories, create those moments, create traditions, like maybe every Sunday is beach day, or every birthdays, there's a tradition for every birthday. So we try to find moments to do that as well.
I'm so glad you spoke about traditions, because I have a question about that, that I want to ask you. You talked about Sundays being beach days, but are there any family rituals or traditions which are more like these, that you've created, that you hope your children will carry forward into their lives?
A very good question. um I don't think we have done anything in the hopes that our children will carry it on, but maybe that just speaks about our attitude towards parenting as well. I think at the end of the day, we had children to enjoy them.
Yeah.
We didn't really think about them carrying on a legacy or carrying on a family name or anything like that. Maybe it'll come in the future, I'm not sure. But for now, it's just, I feel like we're very much just coming out of survival mode and
Yeah.
to thrive as a family. So all of that is just things that maybe we haven't thought about, Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and talking about survival, I am a very big proponent of that. It takes a village to raise a child, and you have two. So, what
yeah,
does your village look like? The people
yeah.
with resources or routines that makes it all possible.
Yeah, I think I in search of that village is where we decided to move continents and move
Uh-huh.
from the US back home, because I think grandparents, both our parents are big, they play a big role in both my children's lives, and they're very present grandparents, very involved grandparents, willing to educate themselves on everything that we're going through,
Wow.
willing to update themselves and their parenting styles, with how, even, when we talk about body autonomy, for example, or we talk about, for Ila especially, how I don't want to bring in any shame about body, even at this age, teach her like good touch, bad touch, and things like that. They're very willing to listen to how our parenting has, culture, attitude has evolved, and update themselves. And so when that is in the mix, why won't I make use of that? Why won't I make that part of my village, right? So primarily it's them. Then I have two younger sisters who are also very
Oh.
in aunts for both the kids, and then for extremely good set of friends. Like we had a very good set of friends back in the US, and we have very, very good set of friends here as well, who treat our kids like their own, and I could trust them with their lives. So I think that's definitely part of it. And of course, for Wade specifically, his entire care team, like
Yeah.
his therapists and people who, like he goes to parkour, for example, and his parkour coach is wonderful. Like he has um, so much knowledge about how to handle neurodivergent children, and having someone like him in our lives is insane. It's like insane. I'm like, oh, how did you
How
manage
did we get it?
it? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's, yeah, so that I think we're slowly starting to like find that community and village, and it's been amazing.
Wow, wow. So heartening to hear that. And tell me about now, earlier you were talking about that you can talk about Ved and Ila a lot more. So I am ready to hear a lot more about them. So tell us about some little things that they do, or the things that they have surprised you with, maybe a question, an observation, or something that stopped you in your tracks and made you rethink. Tell us about those things.
Yeah, I think I've spent a lot of time talking about Wade. This is where I'll talk about Illa. She is an absolute gift for us. Like honestly, it's like how that I have no doubt in my head that she will be her brother's biggest advocate, because even now I can see that even as a 3-year-old, she is, obviously she has all the usual things of a neurotypical 3-year-old child. She has her tantrums, she has all of that, but she's mature beyond her years, because she's seeing how her brother has challenges that she doesn't have, and we make it a point to actively tell her that. Like, for example, because he's dairy and gluten free for several reasons, we tell her, see, Anna is not able to have ice cream, or Anna is not able to have cake, whereas you can have all of these things. So when there's a thing that you cannot have, think about Anna and how he handles those situations, and so you should derive strengths from that. And so she takes in all of these things, and then she'll say it at the most random places. She'll say it, if we're talking about something, she'll suddenly remind us, and she'll be like, oh, Amma, but can Anna have this? Or she'll be like, oh, Amma, if I tell her, maybe we can go on a trip next month, the first thing she'll ask is, can Vedu come? And she's always thinking about her brother. She's constantly thinking about her brother. Like if we're going out and they both are putting shoes on, and he's having a little bit of trouble, she'll go and she'll be like, Anna, do you want any help? And she'll like help him out. And so they are forming a very, very beautiful bond. And my son, anytime Ila is not around, the first thing he'll ask is, where is Ila? He wants Ila to be there all the time. He wants to know where Ila is all the time. And if he gets up in the morning, gives her a big kiss. And so that, seeing that bond is very, very beautiful, both from the perspective of seeing siblings, but
Yeah,
also siblings who are not typical. He's
yeah,
not able to reciprocate the love in the same way that she's giving it to him, but
yeah.
they're figuring it out.
Yeah.
Today she came home from school with a card that she had made for Ved, and she had written some stuff and all on that. And she's like, Ved, here you go. This is a card that I made for you. And previously, when she had done this, Ved took the card and crushed it immediately. So she gives it to him this time. She's like, don't crush it, okay? I'll put it on the fridge for you. And she goes and she puts it on the fridge and puts a magnet on it. So I'm just like how she picks up on all of these things and how she's like
And
forming
she's
her
just
own.
3.
She's just 3. That's the most beautiful part about all this. And yeah, it's just very beautiful to see that.
You know what? Tell me if it's overstepping, but I just want to know something that, you just mentioned that Ved is dairy free and gluten free. And when Ela eats something, there may be situations where, she's having an ice cream or she's having a cake. Doesn't he feel that, why am I not having that? Or how do you navigate that?
So 95% of the time, we try to ensure that he has an option, like a
Hmm.
gluten-free option, or that she doesn't get it if he doesn't have it. Because at home we don't do sugary treats or snacks or anything. And if we do it, it's a special occasion where we can afford to like make sure he has an option as well. And today
Right.
there's plenty of gluten-free, dairy-free options. But in rare cases, like when we're at a party or things like that, where she can have something and he can't, she'll ask first, like, can Anna have this? And if we say no, she knows to go somewhere where he can't see her and, eat her snack or whatever. But in the case where there's other children also, he's very understanding. Like if we tell him, this is something that will cause your tummy to hurt, he's very understanding. Like he's not a child who like, you
Yeah.
know throws a
I think
tantrum.
they pick up on the cues as well. They know that somewhere they know that, if my mom is saying this, it's for my good.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I think, yeah, and also how you communicate with the child is
yeah.
also, I like your approach that you are very communicative. It feels like that. I'm not sure how it works out in the real life, but from whatever I have been hearing of you, it feels that you are a very, very communicative family, that you communicate about everything with each
We do.
other.
We do. And we try to be as transparent as we can with the children, right? From like naming proper body parts and calling it its names to telling them, about talking about Ved's diagnosis to Ila, talking about how his brain is different. Like we do communicate a lot. And it's because honestly, Ila has made us that way. She's very inquisitive. She's very curious. She's asking why all the time. And I don't, I need to have answers for her. Might as well tell her the truth. So
Yeah, yeah. And it also saves you from that bit of storytelling, right? That what did I tell her? You
yeah,
know? Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, I have a reflective question for you. If you could distill your parenting journey so far into maybe one or two moments, some memories that feel like the heart of it all, what would they be?
Yeah, I have one very distinct memory that I can recall and tell you like it changed how we think about parenting
Mm-hmm.
and how where I was talking about how Ashwin and I think of ourselves as a team
Yeah.
where that kind of like came to the spotlight. Um, there was this time, I think I mentioned this, right? There was this time where Ved was very, very sensory
Yes.
had auditory sensories, and Ila was screeching, and they had this. So there were one of those weekends when that was going on, we decided to take a road trip to
Oh,
this place called Yosemite
yes.
in California. And that entire trip, it was a 4-hour drive. The children cried. The entire trip, they cried. And Ashwin and I were like, this is unbearable. But where I knew we both were special and where this relationship was different and where we could actually make it out the other end is we came back home and both of us said at the same time, we need to get this right. We need to do it again. So
Oh,
next weekend, we packed the kids back up in the car and we decided to drive to Lake Tahoe. And we were like, we're doing a road trip again. We're going to figure this out. And that trip went so well because we had like talked about all these strategies to make sure that they're not like riling each other up. And we had finally invested in a nice pair of noise canceling headphones for Wade. We're like, we're going to figure this out. We're not going to give up our love for traveling. We're going to like totally do this. And so that I distinctly remember that weekend, because it was two very different weekends, but pretty much the same setup of like doing
Yeah.
these trips. And it gave me a lot of confidence, that we're going to keep trying until we get things right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
How beautiful. And I think it also speaks to, the kind of challenges that you've spoken about, larger challenges in your marriage, and, how you are willing to work on them as a team, and, going to the therapist and talking about what is, what is happening, and all of that, so, and figuring it out. So
Yeah.
it's very inspiring to hear you talk about that. And tell me about your time. Do you have me time? How do you carve out time for yourself?
Yes, that's one thing that Ashwin never lets me compromise on. So
Wow.
he makes sure that I get my me time. So off late, maybe for the last 8 months or so, working out has been non-negotiable. So that's my time. I either go to the gym, or I go to like a group class, and I get the time there. And then once the kids are in bed, like where they're in bed by 8:30, then it's Ashwin and I get our time, or I get my time to like to read my books or whatever. But every once in a while, I will do a trip, like a girls' trip, or I will go on
Wow.
a trip by myself. I'll go see my sister, or he recently went to do a school reunion, so he gets to do his thing. And then every once in a while, when my parents are willing to take, it's the two of us get to do something together. So somehow or the other, we make time for that.
Yeah, yeah. You're making me feel guilty about taking away time from you and Ashwin to do your
No,
own
no, no,
thing.
no. This is my thing. This is me time. This has been so
I'm
invigorating. Thank
I'm
you.
so glad you said that.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask two very related but different questions to you now. What's a piece of advice about parenting you received very early on that you've completely ignored and you're glad you did?
Take a lot of advice from other parents. I mean, I'm only half
Yeah,
joking, but I feel like it is true. It's good to talk to other parents and get advice. But I think at the end of the day, it's also important to interpret that and see how it applies in your own life. And because blindly following something because somebody else did it has backfired for me, has backfired several times for me. Sleep training is one of those things where
mm,
I sleep trained both children, but I wish I hadn't followed it to such a pedantic level where it was stressing me out and my children out as well. I
yeah,
wish co-sleeping was more accepted, at least when I was parenting both of them.
yeah,
Co-sleeping was more, because I co-sleep with them all the time right now, and I've spent so much time sleep training
yeah,
them when they were younger, right? So I think it depends on each family situation, each
yeah,
families. And I think what happens when you take advice from other parents is also you feel a little bit of FOMO, because they
yeah,
come to you with advice that worked. They're
yeah.
like, sleep training worked for us, so it's going to work for you. It's like we have the best time. Our children are in bed by 7, and we have our time to ourselves, and that's great. And you see that and you're like, oh, why can't we have that? We should have that at all costs. It's not really like that. There could be circumstances and situations that are different for you. So I think, yeah, so that's one thing that I feel like I don't do as much take as much as faith at face value anymore. I try
Yeah,
to interpret whatever other people are saying as experiences, which maybe there's something that I can
yeah,
learn, but maybe it's just an experience that somebody else has had.
yeah, 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 yeah. Interesting. And now flipping the question, what's a piece of advice about parenting that you received early on that you took to heart and you're glad you did?
Um, that's a tough one. I'm trying to think what I have to taken to heart and that I still believe in. I think at the end of the day, I have heard, especially from my mother, that children are very forgiving
Hmm.
and they're very resilient.
Hmm.
And your bad moments are worse in your head than they are in their head. So don't beat yourself up about the bad moments, because children will forget it and they will move on from it. And yes, as a parent, you should set the right example by apologizing for your bad moment, but
Yeah.
continue to stew in that bad moment and continue to beat yourself up about it. They are missing out on the best version you can be of yourself, right? So that is something that I think I've definitely taken to heart. And it's been a very tough thing to practice,
Yeah.
but it is something that I think works.
Yeah. How beautiful. I'm going to take that back as well. And we are coming to an end for this conversation, at least for the time being. I have a few more questions left, but tell me about your pre-parenting self. When you think back to that version of yourself, what's one quality or belief? You've talked about some of them, but tell me about something fundamental that has completely shifted since becoming a mother.
Um, yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of things that has shifted since becoming a mother, but I think one fundamental thing is I used to be a person who expected quick results. I used to be a
Mm.
person who believed that putting in the work right now should give me results tomorrow. And obviously, this belief hasn't shifted just because I've become a parent. I think this belief has shifted because of a lot of other things, but more so because of being a parent.
Yeah.
Because nothing can teach you the nothing can teach you what is delayed gratification more than parenting can,
Yeah.
right? And especially when you're parenting a neurodivergent child, there is only delayed gratification. You put in all the work you want, but you won't see the results of it. You won't even know if you'll see the results of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think even for neurotypical children, it's the same thing. You keep putting in the work, you keep putting in the effort in hopes that at some point,
Some
someday
stage.
in the future, your child will remember this. So your child will have this value imbibed in her or him that they can put to use. And so accepting that and know and understanding that value has made me a different individual in so many other places as well. For
Yeah.
example, I talked about how wealth creation is not even something that I've thought about, right? But understanding that, oh, our horizons doesn't my horizon doesn't have to be 5 months out, 6 months out in terms of like the goals I have in my life. It
Yeah.
actually can be 5 years out, and taking that those 5 years gives me so much more time to hone and to practice and to plan how to get to that point. Whereas the 6 months is probably just going to get me a quick win.
Yeah.
And so that has been a big, huge shift.
Wow. Yeah. And looking back, if you were to give advice to your pre-parent self, what would you say to her?
more more jovially, I would tell her not to judge other parents in restaurants.
I think we all would tell our pre-parent selves that, or in
Yeah,
the airplanes.
yeah, exactly. But I think maybe I would tell my pre-parenting self to give myself more grace.
Hmm.
Because I think giving yourself grace is another big tool that you basically build on to become the best version of yourself. And this is kind of going off of what I said before about beating yourself about the bad parts, right? So giving yourself grace to through however, through self-care, through more forgiveness for yourself, through taking some more time to get through whatever you need to get through. I think as moms and as women especially, there's a lot of pressure from society, from yourself, from expectations. Like your kids need you all the time, your partner needs you, your parents need you, your society has a certain expectations of you, your job needs you, right? And so I think finding that grace of saying, okay, this is what I can give.
Yeah.
The reason I had this bad moment is because I was pushed beyond my bandwidth. Understanding that and making peace with that, I think it's we're not taught that before we become parents, and I wish we were,
Yeah.
so that when we transition into motherhood, it's a little more smoother,
Yeah.
and you don't have to learn it all on the job.
Yeah. 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 How amazing. And finally, my last question to you. If you could leave our listeners with one piece of insight or advice or encouragement, what would that be?
I think the piece of encouragement, because
Mhm.
I think advice is something that is a term that I don't fully resonate with. But encouragement is, I truly believe each one of us is doing our best at
Mm.
any point in time.
Yeah.
We can always be doing more, we can always be learning more, but every one of us as a parent is doing our best. And we should fundamentally believe that. We should fundamentally rejoice that and celebrate that. That doesn't, like I said, that doesn't mean you don't grow from here, you continue growing, but you also believe that you're doing your best.
Wow, wow. I'm going to take so much back, from this conversation, Shar. Thank you so much for this and for sharing not just the milestones, the nuances, the shifts that happened quietly in the background of parenting. I think your story is such an important reminder that parenthood is not just about fitting into a template, it's about learning your own rhythm as a family and honoring it also. And even when the journey doesn't look what you imagined it to be, when you started taking it. And I'm just so grateful for you to have shared a bit of your journey with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I thought the questions were so insightful, and you're such a great host, Neha. Thank you for being so gracious.
Thank you. Thank you. And to everyone listening, if today's conversation resonated with you or reminded you of a moment in your own parenting journey, I'd love for you to share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. And of course, hit subscribe so you never miss a story from parenthood. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, no two journeys are the same. And that's exactly what makes them worth telling. I'll see you next week. Bye bye.